I can relate to the idea about one's children, holding both sort of hope and fear at the same time. It makes me almost feel like hope takes a bit of courage in a way to sort of dare to hope or something like that. It can be tempting to just sort of topple a bit into fear, but courage to hope.
Indeed. Yeah.
Mm.
And hope is a characteristic of people. If you just kind of measure the extent to which a person is hopeful, it's associated with all sorts of other positive outcomes and attributes. To the extent that it's been called the Velcro construct, everything seems to stick to it, you know.
Ah,
So people who are high hopers are better at solving problems in general. They tend to have better mental health. They tend to have better physical health, actually, and longevity, believe it or not, and a higher sense of a quality of life and the ability to transcend the difficult present and kind of look beyond it. Tend to find more meaning in life in a way. So lots of aspects of physical and mental health seem to be related to the extent to which we do hope. You know, even something as concrete as recovering from a physical injury or a disability. People with high hope just have better outcomes and are more likely to recover more function than other people are. So it's something worth considering and hoping for.
it's something of a trait then that different people vary on their levels of hope, and it's also something we can cultivate or can change or we can sort of grow in ourselves.
It is both of those things, and in a way, a trait is something you do one day at a time, and so it kind of builds on itself over time. The trait aspect of hope, I guess, is called optimism most often, um, but also these are practices that you can practice, you can engage in. Yeah.
Mm, yeah. Yes, I suppose the other sort of juxtaposition that you talked about in that sort of the first chapter really was is hope and despair, I suppose, as well. And what would you say about kind of despair or hopelessness? I guess that's also another opposite of hope, really.
Yeah. Well, hopelessness is a well-known um, cousin of depression, certainly.
Mm,
I mean, beside Beck's depression scale, he has a hopelessness scale as well. And in a way, both of them are choices. I mean, when you're looking at the future, when you're considering the future and your current circumstances, um, you can despair, you can hope, and in a way, it's a choice which one you pursue. And it
mm,
matters which one you pursue.
mm. Well, what's that moment of choice like? Like how might that sort of be experienced where we're sort of there and we could go this way or that way? How does a person do that really or achieve that?
It's sort of like a special case of ambivalence, I guess.
It is in a
Uh,
way. Yes.
which is something I've been studying and working with for a long time. But you know, you may think of a reason why you could be hopeful, and then you may think of a reason why you shouldn't be hopeful, and maybe even stop thinking about it because it's kind of unpleasant to be in the midst of that kind of ambivalence. But ultimately, you go down one road or another, and you know, another aspect of hope is just perseverance, just persistence in staying with it. In
Mm,
motivational interviewing, in a way, what we're doing is helping people stay with the road of change to go from tree to tree to tree in a straight line out of the forest in a way.
mm,
So it's kind of like that to persist in the hopeful side of things and make that choice one tree at a time.
yeah, yes, yeah. Actually, that's really sort of that's definitely got me thinking. It's a little bit like, we've learned from MI, perhaps we can't really convince people to be hopeful, I guess it's perhaps that's also an evocative process as well.
Well, in fact, trying to convince someone to be hopeful probably is going to move in the opposite direction.
Yes.
It is when Steve and I got to thinking about importance and confidence as different vectors of motivation,
Yes.
both of them are evoked. You can call forth confidence from people, and trying to push it in. I think not so no successful as finding in them the roots of hope that are already there.
Yes. Yes. Really bringing those to the surface a little bit for a person, and kind of opening up the possibility that perhaps there are these two sides to it for them, and is there a way to really kind of elaborate upon that hopeful side even, and doing all of
At the
that
same
through
time, there's
listening well.
At the same time, sometimes you need to lend people some hope too,
Mm,
as a therapist. I would think of a suicide prevention line, for example, where you may be talking to someone who sees no hope at all at the moment, and even trying to evoke it. There's not much to find, and so just to hold them over to offer them some glimpse of hope that
mm,
that this is a temporary way in which they're looking at things, and it's possible to be somewhere else.
mm.
So there's that aspect too.
There's that aspect as well. And that reminds me of things like confidence statements in MI, where we might lend confidence to a person, or sort of express a belief in them that they can then perhaps, sort of start to believe in themselves, I guess. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
perhaps a similar thing to that.
well, in a way, it's a form of hope. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. One of the things I really enjoyed in the book was the little quotes or the little passages that you had at each of the at the beginnings of each chapter, and not least Christopher Reeves, who kind of loomed
Yes.
large in my childhood, of course, as Superman, and all that happened for him, and so on. I wanted to share a poem with you, and see what you make of it, if that would be all right.
Please. Yeah.
It's an Emily Dickinson poem.
Uh-huh.
Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. And sweetest in the gale is heard, and sore must be the storm that could abash the little bird that kept so many warm. I've heard it in the chillest lands and on the strangest sea, yet never in extremity it asked a crumb of me. What do you make of that little poem?
Well, it's brilliant, Dickinson. I think I quoted the opening lines of that poem in the book somewhere, and if not, I meant to, because it just captures in a poet's imagery so well, the experience of hope, and
Mm,
it can be experienced in many different ways.